So, still no trial date for YNW Melly, but the evidence has been released, and I gotta say, it ain't looking good for Melly, man. So, on 10/26/18 at 4:35 a.m., Cortland Henry shows up to Memorial Miramar Hospital with 2 dead bodies in his car. Police ask him what happened. They do an investigation, and they say he's lying. What I'm going to try to do in this video is take the court documents and take my Google Maps and try to paint a picture of both versions of events. So when he was questioned, he said that he left the recording studio in Fort Lauderdale with the 2 victims in his vehicle. He drove on I-595 to I-75 and exited at Miramar Parkway heading west. He stated that just past Southwest 160th, a vehicle pulled next to him on his right side and started shooting. He immediately lowered his body position to the floorboards in a protective posture to avoid being shot, and when he sat up, his friends had been shot and he proceeded immediately to the nearest hospital. It says a detective later drove with Henry to have him identify the area where it happened, and they shut down the block between 160th and 172, and it says the detectives and officers walked the 12 blocks on foot. Okay? They're searching everything. And it says not a single report of gunshots was reported and no evidence of a shooting was found. Okay? It says Henry's hands were processed by the police department, testing with Tri-Tech gunshot residue evidence collection kit. They are testing everything. It says the immediate test was a negative, but the lab results are still pending with the Tri-Tech gunshot residue collection, whatever. So after that, it says they made contact with a man named Dontavius Withers, and basically he's the roommate of the 2 victims. According to Withers, they left the recording studio in 2 separate vehicles, the gray Jeep, which arrived at the hospital, and a red Mitsubishi. And he said that Melly left with him in the red Mitsubishi. He said he went straight home, got there before his roommates, the 2 victims, and found out later that they were dead. When he was asked if he knew where Melly was later on, he said he didn't. However, it was later discovered that he was lying, and that just before he was questioned, he was actually with Melly at the rapper Fredo Bang's house, which I've never listened to his music. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right. And the report says nothing of his involvement other than that. Here you have the roommate of the 2 victims. He's saying Melly was not in the car with the victims, that Melly was actually in the red Mitsubishi with him. And so me as a fan, I'm like, yes, bro, there it is. He's not with them. But when detectives viewed the security footage from the recording studio, they see that Melly was in the Jeep when it left the studio. The footage even shows Melly getting into the left rear passenger seat, and the 2 victims were seated on the front right and back right passenger seats. When they confronted Withers with the video evidence, he then changed his story and said Melly was in the gray Jeep initially, but hit him on Snapchat to pull over so that he could jump into the red Mitsubishi, which he said happened near the Sheridan Street exit. That's pretty much all it says about Melly and his people's side of events. And here's where we get into the evidence and the police side of the story. So the police said, okay, this is what they say happened. Everyone keeps their cell phone on them, so let's get a search warrant with the cell phone company and see where they actually were the entire night. Anybody who's used Find My Friends on iPhone knows how accurate this can be. So the cell phone records show Withers, the roommate, did go straight home from the music studio without stopping. Therefore, Melly did not get out and hop into his vehicle on the way home. This is where things get crazy. So, the cell phone GPS records revealed that yes, the gray Jeep traveled west on Miramar Parkway, but turned north on Southwest 184th towards Pines Boulevard, and then turned west on Pines Boulevard. It says video evidence shows the Jeep traveling west in the 19200 block at 3:53 and returning east at 4:06. So I'm guessing that this is when it all went down, somewhere between that time. So from the video evidence and the cell phone evidence, they can easily conclude that the driver was lying about the path that they traveled, because they didn't go straight to the hospital from Miramar Parkway. Okay, so the cell phone records show their phones traveling together around the area west of I-75 in Pembroke Pines at 4:25 prior to arriving at the hospital at 4:35. The records also indicate that Melly left the vehicle at 4:32, just 3 minutes before the vehicle shows up at the hospital, because that's when their cell phones separate. So basically, detectives are saying that this time of them driving around together before going to the hospital is pretty much them trying to get their story straight before having to deal with the detectives. Okay, from the video evidence, the driver left the studio wearing a black t-shirt, and he arrived at the hospital with a hoodie pulled over it, and when they examined him, the t-shirt had blood on the front and the back, and the hoodie was clean and clear. And so on November 21st, almost a whole month after the incident, they used the cell phone records. They take a K9 unit out to the area, and the K9 did his whole doggy thing and found the spot of the crime. So it says on the side of the road, about 870 feet from the nearest north and south cross street, they found 8 .40 caliber Blazer S&W shell casings on the ground next to the roadway in the shoulder. They found 2 different types of glass that matched the front passenger and rear passenger window. And when they searched the Jeep the night of the incident, inside the vehicle they found a .40 caliber Blazer S&W shell casing. It was found on the floorboard of the left passenger side. It was found inside a white plastic bag on the floorboard. This is the most damning and weirdest piece of evidence in this whole story. Like, why was it in a plastic bag? That's weird. That's weird. So they took the bullet that they found in the floorboard and took it to a lab, compared it to the bullets that they found on the side of the road, and they were a match. At this point, it mentions that the crime scene is on Pembroke Road, and if you remember that it was about 870 feet from the nearest north and south cross street, and I'm just speculating, but I'd put the crime scene somewhere around here. This is where it gets bad, man. The autopsy. So they do an autopsy on Williams, who was the front right passenger. He's also known as YNW Sack Chaser. And from the autopsy, they pretty easily determined that the wound on his neck was from back to front, left to right, and upward. Not from the right side of the vehicle from a passing car. No. They even say it was obvious that the projectile entered from the left rear side of the vehicle, which is the exact spot that YNW Melly was sitting when he left the recording studio according to the video surveillance footage. Further examination of the wounds showed that the bullet was fired from a distance between 3 inches and 3 feet. Okay, basically you could reach out and touch the person. So look, man, according to this, what's been released, and yes, I know it could be some big conspiracy, but according to this, it's pretty clear. Melly was the shooter, and he got blood on blue Balenciagas that night and tried to cover it up. So look, what does this tell us? It tells us that YNW Melly killed his friends. Okay? But what it doesn't tell us is why. The charges are 2 counts of premeditated murder. So that means the police department somehow determined that these actions were premeditated, but so far we have no mention of motive. We have not even anything pointing to why they're calling it premeditated. So from here, I can imagine his defense team trying to get these charges kind of bumped down to a manslaughter charge. Maybe they're going to argue that he was attacked in the car. You know, it points out that when Melly was getting into the vehicle, according to surveillance footage, he had a satchel that was weighted down. I guess they're saying that there was a gun in his bag, but the report also states that Thomas, who was in the Jeep next to Melly, also had a weighed down satchel. So I can see Melly's defense team trying to get him off on manslaughter. I can't see how they would argue that he wasn't there, or how they would argue that he didn't shoot him. With the autopsy and the cell phone records and the video surveillance footage, I think their best bet would be manslaughter at this point, which I have no idea what kind of sentence that would bring, but he's gonna do some time. I know he's mentioned that he has over 300 songs recorded, so you can be expecting Melly to be releasing some music while he's locked up. And Adam22 said that he spoke with his management and they're confident, and I can't help but wonder if it's the same management that lied to the detectives according to this paper, which check my other video, I posted all 8 pages of it. So just let me know what you think about this. Is he getting off? Is he done for? Or, you know, was he set up? What are your thoughts? I want to know. And hope you enjoyed the video. Later.